Good day everyone, and for this video, this is just a continuation of our lesson, which is about entity relationship modeling concepts. Now for this video, we'll be discussing this time about attributes. Okay. Now let's start with having a definition. What is an attribute? Okay. So an attribute is a property of an entity or a relationship type. When we say property, ito yung kumbaga katangian, no? Katangian kung sa Tagalog pa. Yeah. So for example, staff entity type may be described by the staff number. Number for short. Staff number, name, position, and salary attributes. Okay? So, again, when we say attribute, it's a property, no? Katangian. No? When we say katangian, di ba, for example, no, may nakita tayong babae or lalaki na dumaan sa harap natin, and we want to describe that person to our friend. So, for example, itong babae na to, tol, maganda siya. Yung buhok niya is black. Mahaba yung buhok niya. Pula yung mata niya. Pula yung mata. Tsaka yung color ng yung cutis niya is white. Okay, at tsaka matangkad siya. Yun. So yun na-mention ko na in how what I mentioned just to describe that person, no? The color of the hair, the length of the hair, mahaba, no? Kasi we have also a short and medium length na hair. So color of the hair, the length of the hair, the color of the eye, and the color of the skin, and yung height niya, diba, na-mention ko na matangkad yung babae na yun. So those, what I mentioned, yung mga katangian na yun, ay, yun. So those are examples of an attribute. Okay? So we also have what we call this attribute domain, or the set of allowable values for one or more attributes. So pag sinabing allowable values, ito lang yung mga values na pwede lang yang hawakan. Ito lang yung pwede niyan dapat na values. No? So for example, we have year level sa attribute for the student entity type. So the only possible values could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, depende na lang, no, sa school nyo kung may 6 year pa. So meron bang school na umaabot ng 6 years? So usually 5 years or engineering. Siyempre walang 0, no? Kasi wala namang year level na 0. So yun, ito 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 na allowable values for the year level. Ito yung tinatawag na domain. Okay? For attribute domain, yeah. So we also have this simple attribute. So ito yung attribute that cannot be hindi na siya pwedeng mahimay pa, ma-divide into smaller subcomponents. So later, no, I will kung merong simple, syempre meron ding tinatawag na after this slide. So for example of simple attributes, we have position and salary attribute for the staff, kasi yung salary hindi na to siya salary na talaga yan, wala nang ibang sub components, no? Position, wala na yan. Anyway, we'll have this next slide, itong composite. So ito yung component attribute na pwedeng ma-subdivide pa into smaller components. Okay? So the most common example of that is the address. Kasi yung address attribute, pwede pa siya ma-divide into street, a barangay, and a municipality attribute. Okay? So, yung decision, no, by the way, no, if you're going to implement this address, no, into a database, nakadepende na yan sa kaso, no, depende lang sa use purpose, no. If you're going to make the address as a single attribute, or you're going to divide it pa into further attributes. So, for example, sa SIAS, if you notice in your student profile, so it has an address, it has a municipality, and it also has a zip code. So, yung reason kaya ginawa niyan is para matrace ng administration kung sino yung mga students na nakatira sa Naval, sino yung mga students na nakatira sa Almeria, and so on and so forth. So, yun, that's another reason, no, kung bakit we are dividing composite attributes, no, into sub components, smaller components. But depende na lang, no, for example sa Facebook, yung address talagang as a whole na yan, no, hindi siya specific na you type pa ano yung street, ano yung barangay mo, ano yung municipality mo. Hindi, it just is a whole. So again, it really depends na on the use case. So we also have this single valued attribute. Excuse me. So when we say single valued, yung itong attribute na to could only hold a single value. Okay? For each occurrence of an entity type. So, for example, we have age for a person entity. So, hindi man pwede na yung person may dalawang age, di ba? Pwede ba yung 18 years old ka tapos you are also 69? parang imposible naman. So, yun nga. Age attribute is a example of a single value. Isa lang talaga yung age mo, di ba? So, another example is a student. Yung ID number mo, yung isa lang talaga yan. So, pwera na lang kung you have another account sa high school. For example, there are universities na may high school tsaka college. So, sineseparate nila yung account for high school and account for college. So, yun. That could happen. But, kung sometimes, yung ibang school na exclusively college lang, so yung ID number mo isa lang talaga yan, whether you will mag-stop ka ng school tapos babalik ka sa returnee, so yung ID number mo is just the same, hindi yan mag-change. Okay, so we also have multi-valued attribute. Kung may single, merong multi, marami. Yeah? So it's an attribute that can hold multiple values, or that holds multiple values. So for the most common example for that is cell phone number, di ba? Kasi pwede man na we can possess one or more contact number, cell phone number, di ba? Kasi yung mga cellphones natin use mostly dual SIM naman, no? So pwede tayong magkaroon ng maraming contact number. So itong cell phone number, so this is an example of a multi-valued attribute. Okay. Then we also have derived attribute. So it is an attribute that represents a value. So yung value ng attribute na to is derived, nakukuha galing sa value rin ng mga related attributes or set of attributes, but not necessarily in the same entity type. Anyway, to further explain that, let's say for example in the product entity, then we have this discounted price na attribute. So itong discounted price na attribute, this is an example of a derived attribute. Kasi yung value niya is na-derive or nakuha galing sa existing na attributes ni product. For example, discount percent and price. Kaya for example, we have, kunyari sa product, mayroon tayong burger. Tapos yung burger, yung original price niya is 50 pesos. Yung discount niya is 50%. So, yung discounted price was calculated from the discounted percent and the price. So, 25 pesos. Itong 25 pesos, hindi to automatic, hindi to manual na nilalagay mo, in-input mo. This is calculated. No? So, basta any attribute that is as a result, no, resulta ng calculation or ng mga related attributes, so that's what we called a derived attribute. Okay, excuse me. So next attribute is we have this kaning key. So this is special to siyang attribute that plays very specific roles within an entity type. Excuse me. So in the key, there are different types of key. So first we have candidate key, primary key, and then we have composite key. So itong candidate key, so these are our candidate keys. So these are the minimal set of attributes. Ito yung mga attributes that that uniquely identifies each occurrence of an entity type. So in order for that key na maging candidate key siya, so dapat it must hold values that are unique. Dapat unique siya for every occurrence sa entity type. So say for example, kada person, dapat yung attribute na yon is dapat unique yung value niya, no? So also candidate key siya kung dapat kung candidate key yon, dapat each cannot contain a null value. So hindi siya pwedeng mag hold ng missing values or null values kung candidate key siya. Okay, so for example, we have in a employee entity. So for let's say for example lang na lahat ng empleyado sa Pilipinas meron ng national ID, no? So let's just assume na all people in the Philippines meron ng national ID. And of course, when we say national ID, unique 'yan, no? Wala kang dapat kaparehan na national ID. No? That is unique for every person sa Philippines. Also, we have also an employee ID number. Kasi syempre upon employment mo sa organization, automatic meron ka ng employee ID number, and that is also unique for each employee. Now, since etong employee ID number at saka yung national ID number, they can uniquely identify each occurrence of an entity type. So ito silang dalawa, these are what we call candidate keys. Bakit candidate keys? Kumbaga kandidato, no? Kandidato kasi just like in election, iisa lang dyan yung pipiliin. Yung pipiliin dyan, yun yung magiging tinatawag na primary key. Okay? So therefore, primary key is the candidate key na yung pag sinabing primary key, ito na yung primary key, ay ito na yung candidate key na pinili, no? To uniquely identify each occurrence of an entity type. So between for example, between the employee ID number at saka yung employee ID numbers, so pareho to silang dalawa that they can uniquely identify each employee, but iisa lang sa kanila yung pwedeng yung pipiliin lang talaga as the primary key. So in this instance, since the employee ID was selected as the primary key, so therefore the employee ID number is the primary key. Okay. Now, yung choice mo sa pagpili ng primary key para sa entity, nakabase yan sa some considerations, no? So perhaps for example, yung employee ID number Yung number of characters niya is 4. 4 characters lang. Whereas yung national ID up to 8 characters siya. No? So ikaw as a database developer, if I'm going to select primary key among these two, syempre doon ako sa attribute na may less characters yung i-consume niya. So therefore itong employee ID, since 4 characters pa lang yung limit niya, so mas makakatipid ako sa storage, no? Kaysa sa national ID na 8 characters siya always, no? So every time may bagong empleyado na i-add sa database, so another 8 characters na naman na i-allocate sa system. So diba? So therefore yun, that's another factor, no, in selecting primary key among candidate keys. So we have also composite key. So just like the composite attribute, no. So these are candidate keys that could composed of 2 or more attributes, no, whose values together are unique for each entity occurrence. So for example, no, first name and last name. Let's say there are 2 separate attributes. So as a single attribute, first name, syempre yung first name, may chance talaga yan na magkaparehas yung mga first names ng mga empleyado. Same with the last name, there's a tendency na may kapareho ka rin na apelido. But if we're going to combine this first name and last name attribute as one composite key, so they can uniquely identify, they used to uniquely identify each entity occurrence. Yeah. So yun. But that example lang yan, kasi most likely yung first name, kahit ngayon yung first name o last name, kahit i-combine mo, there's also a chance pa naman na may kapareha ka na na even nga kahit yung middle name, no, from first name, last name to middle name, may kapareha ka pa rin ng pangalan. So it's not really 100% na masasabi natin na composite key yung pag i-combine mo yung first name, last name, and even the middle name pag kinumbine mo yung tatlo. But anyway, just for the sake of example, so that's an example of a composite key. Okay, so in this is how you're going to illustrate the attributes using sa ERD mo, in our ERD modeling, using the UML model notation. Kasi if nasanay kayo sa chain notation, yung chain notation is yung attributes na sa labas as siya, oval, no? For example, itong staff, meron siyang mga, sa palibot niya merong mga oval, and each oval represents attributes. So in this UML notation, so ibang version ng pag ERD, yung attributes nasa baba lang nakalista sa itong entity. So ito yung entity, no, staff, and then itong nasa baba, these are the attributes. Same with the branch, these are the attributes niya. Now as you notice, we have a whole variety of attributes. So at natin, we'll be mentioning each one of these. Okay, so again, as I've mentioned kanina, etong nakapalig nito, covered sa curly brace, these are attributes din to. Yeah. And then itong nilang attribute na minarkahan, that was tagged with PK, so ito yung tinatawag na primary key. So therefore, this is how you indicate primary keys sa ERD. Okay, So itong address, as you notice, no, yung street, city, tsaka yung postcode, naka-indent. So sinadya yan kasi it basically means that this street, city, and postcode are part of the address na attribute. So therefore, this is itong address na to, this is a composite attribute, So ano lang hinimay-himay niya, this address is a composite attribute that's composed of street, city, and postcode attributes. And then itong total stuff, derived attribute siya kasi minarkahan siya, nilagyan siya ng slash. So this is how you denote itong attribute na to is derived attribute, just by simply putting slash sa pinaka first. And then we have this one, itong cellphone number, no, may bracket, and then under the bracket may 1.2. So ibig sabihin itong cellphone number to, this is a multi-valued attribute kasi na-mention nga dito as written in this diagram na this branch entity can hold 1 or 2 cellphone numbers. So bali at least 1 cellphone number or up to 2 cellphone numbers yung kaya naman, no? Yun. So what if 3? What if pala up to 3 cellphone numbers yung gusto mong sa branch? So edit 3 yung ilalagay mo dito. 3 instead of 2, 3. What if unlimited? Or hindi mo alam exactly. Basta marami siyang cellphone number nga pwedeng i-hold na value. So instead of a number, asterisk. So dapat siya 1 ... asterisk. If yung ibig mong sabihin, is yung cellphone number can hold as many values. Okay, so I think that's all for this video. So we'll have another separate video for this one. It's strong and weak entities and the other remaining. And that's all for this video, and thank you for watching. So see you in the next video. Bye bye.